Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed that our journey through the first few decades of life is not the main story, but merely preparation. Life really does begin at 40, he once said. Up until then, you are just doing research. It's a bold claim, one that challenges the way society typically views aging. We are taught to fear getting older, to see midlife as a time of crisis, chaos, or decline. Pop culture is full of cliches about the so-called midlife crisis, a time marked by existential dread, impulsive decisions, and desperate attempts to hold on to youth. But Jung offered a radically different perspective. What if this stage of life isn't a crisis at all, but an awakening? What if midlife is not an ending, but the true beginning? To understand this shift, we must examine what the first 40 years of life represent. Think of them as a foundational phase, a time of exploration, trial and error, identity building, and learning how to navigate the external world. We grow rapidly during these years, absorbing the values of our families, peers, and cultures. We pursue success, chase dreams, and define ourselves by how we're seen. But these years are also filled with searching. Who am I? What should I do with my life? What will make me happy? These questions drive much of our early adulthood, yet the answers often feel incomplete. We build careers, relationships, and families, but many of our choices are shaped by societal expectations, not inner truth. We're gathering data, experimenting with roles, and striving to meet standards set by others. According to Jung, this isn't failure, it's necessary, it's research, it's the groundwork. By the time we approach midlife, a subtle yet powerful shift begins to unfold. The ambitions and priorities that once consumed us start to lose their urgency. Climbing the career ladder, meeting expectations, fitting in, these once crucial goals start to feel hollow. We begin to realize that many of our choices were driven not by what we truly value, but by what we thought we were supposed to value. This realization, while unsettling, is also liberating. It marks the beginning of a new phase, one Jung called individuation. This is the journey of becoming whole, of integrating the many parts of ourselves and living from a place of authenticity. Individuation doesn't happen overnight. It starts quietly, often with small, persistent questions. Is this all there is? Am I living the life I truly want? Whose dream have I been chasing? These questions may arise during a major life transition, a birthday, a quiet evening alone, or even a career milestone. And once they appear, they rarely fade away. Instead, they grow louder, demanding answers. Answers we can no longer ignore. Society may label this experience a midlife crisis, but Jung invites us to reframe it. What if this isn't a breakdown? What if it's a breakthrough? What if midlife, with all its doubts, disruptions, and inner unrest, is not a collapse, but a calling? A call to become who we truly are beneath the roles we've played. To truly understand Jung's perspective, we must revisit how he viewed the structure of the psyche, especially in the first half of life. During our early years, we focus on constructing what Jung called the persona, the social mask we wear to fit into the world. This is the version of ourselves shaped by our environment, upbringing, and cultural expectations. It's how we learn to succeed, gain approval, and function in society. And it's necessary. Without the persona, we wouldn't survive childhood or adolescence. We need to know the rules, roles, and responsibilities that make life predictable and secure. But the danger comes when we confuse the mask for our true self. Over time, we begin to over-identify with it. The successful professional, the dutiful parent, the charming friend. These roles may bring validation, but they can also become prisons. As we reach midlife, cracks in the persona start to show. We feel confined by the roles we've mastered. We begin to sense that there's more, something deeper calling to be acknowledged. That's where the real work begins. Jung called this next step individuation, a psychological and spiritual process of becoming whole. It involves integrating not just our strengths and virtues, but also our shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, suppressed, or denied. The shadow contains our fears, insecurities, desires, and wounds. It's the inner darkness we avoid facing, but which holds the key to our authenticity. This process is not comfortable, it's not neat, but it is necessary. Facing the shadow can feel like dismantling everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Yet it is only through this courageous encounter that we can begin to live a life that feels whole, one that honors both the light and the dark within us. At midlife, individuation takes on a new urgency. Our questions shift from the external to the internal. What truly matters to me? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Am I living in alignment with my values? These are no longer theoretical or philosophical questions. They feel pressing, personal, immediate. The answers can't be found in titles or trophies, but only within. And that inward turn often changes everything. The ambition, competition, and striving that drove us in our youth begin to lose their power. Success alone is no longer enough. What we crave is meaning. What we seek is authenticity. Life becomes less about doing and more about being, less about proving and more about becoming. Psychologists and neuroscientists have found that this shift is supported by real changes in the brain. As we age, the emotional centers of the brain become more balanced. We gain perspective. We become less reactive, more reflective. We begin to navigate life, not from fear or pressure, but from intention and clarity. This emotional maturity allows us to question the path we've been walking and choose a different one if it no longer aligns with who we are becoming. Section 5. Embracing the unraveling, a new kind of freedom. This transition isn't without its challenges. In fact, it can feel like everything is falling apart. We might question our careers, relationships, goals, even our sense of identity. Things that once brought comfort now feel empty. This unraveling can be painful, confusing, and disorienting. No wonder popular culture labels it a midlife crisis. But what if it's not a crisis at all? Author Brené Brown reframes this experience as an unraveling, not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. It's the peeling away of everything we thought we had to be so we can become who we truly are. The unraveling is messy, but it's also sacred. It asks us to release control, surrender old narratives, and step into the unknown with open hands. And this surrender is where freedom begins. As psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "The primary human drive is not pleasure or power, but meaning. And at midlife, that drive becomes undeniable. We're no longer content with living someone else's script. We want a life that resonates with our soul, a life that reflects our deepest truths. This often means facing our greatest fears, the fear of failure, of being judged, of not knowing what's next. But it's also where the transformation happens. The moment we stop chasing validation and start honoring our inner voice, something powerful begins to unfold. We begin to rewrite the story of our lives, not based on who we were expected to be, but based on who we actually are. Psychologist Abraham Maslow called this process self-actualization, the drive to realize our fullest potential. At midlife, self-actualization takes on a new texture. It's no longer about climbing higher or achieving more. It's about living in alignment with what feels true and whole, and this is where Jung's wisdom shines the brightest. He believed that midlife is not the beginning of the end, but the beginning of the real story. The first half of life was research, he said, gathering data, trying roles, exploring paths. But now we're ready to live with intention, not for status or survival, but for truth. Studies support this view. Many people in their 40s, 50s, and beyond report higher levels of life satisfaction than those in their 20s and 30s. They feel more grounded, more connected, more alive. They care less about what others think and more about what brings them peace, purpose, and fulfillment. This is the gift of midlife, not a crisis, but a homecoming, a chance to reclaim ourselves, to integrate the parts we've ignored, to honor the journey that brought us here, messy, imperfect, and beautiful. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But he also knew it's the most liberating. Midlife asks us to do just that, to stop pretending, to stop performing, and to finally start living. Life doesn't truly begin until we've done the groundwork. Everything before was practice, preparation, a necessary phase of learning and survival. But now we begin the real work, the work of becoming whole, of integrating our shadows, of shedding our masks, of living in alignment with who we were always meant to be. Midlife is not the end of the road. It's the start of the journey we came here to walk. Not because we've found all the answers, but because we've finally started asking the right questions. And that changes everything.